So I was recently doing some digging into some numbers in regards to training and development, and I came across this interesting fact that 67% of learning and development personnel feel like they lack the resources to do their job. So imagine that. I mean, you go into a room of 10 to 15, let's say 15 people. I'll do 15 because I can do that math in my head. You have 15 people in the learning and development world in a room. 10 of those people feel like they don't have what they need to get their job done. They don't have the time, the money, the workforce to do that. Or another way to look at it, only 5 of the 15 do. So that's what we're going to dig in today. Today we're going to kind of look at how we can kind of overcome that. And so that's episode 2 of the Learning and Development Lunch Hour. So, I'm Pat with Great Circle Learning, and for those who, if this is your first time joining the lunch hour, welcome. Feel free in the comments to, say where you're from. For those who've joined for the premiere episode last week, welcome back. This is a learning process. As I'm going, done is better than perfect. So hopefully some of the issues that I thought were available that happened last week, we've resolved, or I've resolved, and we'll develop new issues that have to be fixed next time. But like the big one for me today is I figured out, I think, how to actually stream to the event that I created instead of setting it to a separate one. So right there, it's a big win for me. But thank you for joining. But what I really wanted to dig into today was that idea of, lacking the resources to do our job. All right. So how do we go about, or how did I get this information? So where I was digging, and I was looking actually to figure out the time people spend to build training materials. I think as an industry we need to be better about speaking to our numbers, and so trying to get all the data that's out there. And a lot of companies, if they do capture it themselves, they don't share it. So a lot of it, you're going through surveys and things like that, like what ATD does. And that's actually where I saw this. So this was from the most recent ATD study, which was actually from January of last year. They don't do a study each and every year. I think there was 2021, there was one before that in 2019, I think it was 2016, 2011, somewhere like that. There's been several stages. One of the biggest things that jumped out at me on this one this year was that, that 67%, right? So I just put it right from their study that, the top 3 barriers to your team creating learning products faster is time, budget, and headcount. And 67% of the people thought that. So, obviously, if there's this is an issue, right? And I don't think anyone would say that it isn't an issue, or they don't face it in some way. But how do we go about? How do we correct this? How do we use this information to help us do our job better? So what I'm actually thinking about in regards to this is, are the barriers actually bad? Right? And my gut reaction on this is actually, yeah, barriers are bad. So maybe I'm asking the wrong question here. So instead of asking, are barriers bad, let's look at that, are barriers always bad? And that's, I think, a better place to come at this. How do we combat having limited barriers, or having barriers and limited resources? One is, there's got to be a mind shift. So we can only control what we can control, right? So if I can't control the budget that I have, or the time frame I have to get something done with, I need to look, or the amount of people I have to do the job, I've got to look for other ways to take advantage, to use some of that maybe to my advantage. And so I'm actually going to come over. I actually talked about this earlier in a LinkedIn post this week, or actually it was last week. So, and this is one of the things I want to get better at on these live streams. My goal here was to actually show you a video from YouTube, or it didn't have to be YouTube, but a video of a scene from Apollo 13. And what the scene was, well, actually, I'll come back to that scene. The reason I didn't do that yet in this in the live stream is I could get the video to play, but I couldn't get the sound to come through. And then because I was streaming it from YouTube or pulling it in from YouTube, I kept getting the pop-ups of, it was like the ads, all those things. So I didn't want those. So I just referred back to my LinkedIn post. But the idea of barriers, so in this case, barriers or restrictions, to me, are things that we should maybe look for, because they're going to help us as I say, restrictions breed creativity. So the scene from Apollo 13, for those who haven't seen it, or it's been a while, obviously Apollo 13, true story, astronauts, they're going to the moon, there's an incident on the way to the moon, and they can't land. And so they're spending, I guess, they're more time in the space module than they thought they were going to, or the space capsule than they thought they were going to be, or there was more people. That part's a little hazy. It's been a couple years since I watched it. But what ended up happening is they're running out of air. The air filtration in the space capsule, the filters are becoming overwhelmed. Now they have attached to this the lunar module that uses air filters, but one's a cylinder, one's a cube. So circle and square. And so you can't take one out of one and put it in the other because they're different shapes. So in this scene, some of the engineers down at NASA are trying to figure out how to fit a square into a circle, put the square into the circle. And so what they have is they pour out onto the table all the equipment or all the materials that the astronauts would have had up in space. So that's their restriction. Well, they actually have two. One is the material, and probably even the more importantly one is the time frame. Right? If they don't get this resolved in a matter of hours, the astronauts suffocate. They run out of air. So they were. Spoiler alert, like if you haven't seen the movie that came out in the early 2000s, or actually heard the story that happened back in the 70s, right, 50-year spoiler alert, they make it. But they were able to come up within these bounds of the materials that we have limited materials, we have a very short time frame, they were able to creatively come up with a solution to do that. So barriers are not always bad. They're going to help us find ways that we can do things to make our lives easier. Or maybe not easier, but maybe look at a way that we could do something that we normally wouldn't do, or go about it. So it's going to maybe open up, even though maybe the term working within the box, it may open up a different window or a different thought process to help us find solutions. So I actually want to kind of look at this in terms of, let's look at what could be a real life scenario in learning and development. We're going to look at it budget-wise. So obviously you work for an organization, there's X amount of dollars, right? If your organization is your work, if it's the home, wherever, you've got a certain amount of money to work with. So in learning and development, and it obviously is going to vary from organization to organization, but a lot of the ones that I work with, you'll see that the training and development's budget covers the design and development of all training across all, let's say, departments or divisions in that company or in that organization. So use a math, let's just say it's $10,000. You have $10,000 for design and development. Obviously, it's probably bigger because you got to figure in salary and all those things, but for our intents and purposes, it's $10,000. And you've got that earmarked for, let's say, 2 different projects that are going to happen this year. Now the sales department comes in and says they need to have training done as well. They need to have it designed and developed for whatever reason. One way to look at this, right? So we've got a limited budget, and we've got to get this done, and that budget's kind of earmarked for something else. What if we take that, and it's a stretch. It's this is kind of it's an outside thought process, and I'll explain why I think this should be something we should look at as an industry or as organizations more and more. But what if we take that the idea of that budget and look at the programs that we're training, that the different that sales department that needs a certain amount of training to be done. They should, because it's for their department, some of their budget should go for paying for that training. And it's twofold. One is it frees up money frees up money for the training and development department to design and develop that training, if you had to go out and purchase it, whatever that is. But more importantly, and this is my thought on this, is it puts some skin in the game for the department that's getting the training. Right? How many times in training and development, or in your you've created training, you've taught you've led it, you've facilitated it, it's rolled out across the organization, and then it doesn't it doesn't go any further. People don't take the initiatives that the training was supposed to accomplish, and they go through the training and then they go back to their status quo afterwards. And I think there's two reasons. I mean, there's multiple reasons, but the two big ones for me is, one is that the department or the management of the department that got the training wasn't invested into the concept of the training. And if they have skin in the game for that, it will help them, buy into that more, right? If you go and say, all right, great, sales department, it's going to take us, we need $5,000 to build this out. And if they have a $10,000 budget, right, and obviously much smaller numbers, but if they have to use a portion of their budget to help for the training that's, for their group, the directors, the VPs are going to probably make sure that the managers are coaching to the training that we just did, so that not only are we not, losing I'm trying to do this in not a double negative, that they're getting the money or getting the training, and the money that they invested into it is well spent, versus we took time away from doing our from the actual selling to go learn a new skill or new skills from the training department. So we lost productivity there. We then didn't support the training after the fact, so we lost productivity, and then we lost. And this is one of the great things about going live. I just lost my train of thought. But the whole idea here is that if we can get our budget spread out across different the different departments that we're designing training for, they're going to have skin in the game that's going to help them make supporting the training that we've just provided better, right? Training's not always the answer. Sometimes it's the coaching or supporting the training after coaching, or it's just coaching. And by making sure that the departments or divisions take on that responsibility, having them put money into that should help that process along. Now, this was, a really long-winded and probably not, I probably should have spelled this out a little bit clearer, but again, I'm going live. It's learning as we go, right? But that's the idea, is how can we look at items that are out there that are barriers to us, that are limiting us, and how can we find other solutions to that? So that's going to really bring us over to, one is if we have a problem, acknowledging it, kind of thinking about it. But now, how do we go and how can we start taking advantage or overcoming that issue? And so I've laid it out into for me 4 items. I would say that these aren't in any specific order, right? I'd say they're more intertwined than 1 through 4, but kind of going through them. First one, let's be strategic. In anything that we do, strategies and processes are going to make us better. There's a famous quote from Yogi Berra, the catcher from the mid-century of the 1950s, 1960s, catcher for the Yankees, Yogi Berra, had a quote that was, and I'm not going to probably get this verbatim, but the general idea is, if we don't know where we're going, we're going to get to somewhere else, right? So if you don't plan on where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere completely different than where you needed to be. So having strategies and processes will help us get us to where we need to be. So think about this. Like, I always like to go, let's begin with the end in mind. What's our end goal? What are we trying to achieve? And now let's look at what are we starting from? Like, so if our goal is that we want all our sales department to be able to have great 7-second opens, or we're trying to build up a better customer service in regards to email etiquette, or whatever those may be. If that's our end goal, we can now say, all right, we're starting from this point, and we can now backtrack and set up the processes, the systems that we need to get us to where we need to be. So strategy, very, very important. Another one that's really going to help us or help you overcome barriers is find ways to invest into yourself. This could be additional courses. It could be new skills. It's, if you're finding the way, if you know there's an area that's lacking, and you have the ability or the wherewithal, the want to take over something in that, look at how can we get better. So, it could be viewing stuff on YouTube. It could be taking courses. It could be looking for certifications, right? Finding ways to make yourself better in any way. Go to the library and get a book. There's my favorite one, right? Your library card, maybe you pay some fines, but one of the best places that you can get knowledge. But yeah, let's look at ways. What can we do? How can we invest into ourselves that will make us better at our job? The other nice part about going into investing into ourselves is it's going to end up helping you in the long run. Like, maybe it helps you in this current job. Maybe it's going to help you in a job that's you're not really aware that you wanted at that moment, but because you've done some other steps, other doors open to you. So investing in yourself is going to make yourself more marketable in the overall industry for training and development, or wherever you may want to go. Right? For those who are looking to transition from classroom teaching with in elementary, middle school, and high school, and now want to move over into corporate into corporate education, that they're investing in themselves, learning different systems, Articulate, Beyond, in terms of e-learning. They're learning new adult learning strategies versus strategies for teaching elementary school kids and all those type of things. All of that investing into themselves is helping them get to their final goal. So always find a way to get yourself better each and every day. All right. After that, use the right tools, right? One of the best ways, if we've got to overcome certain barriers, especially, let's say, time, money, find a tool that's going to make you more productive. Well, in this one, this is going to tie actually right back up into invest in yourself. Not only it's the tool, not just having the tool, but how to use the tool, right? So I could build a house, or we're going to go to a fence. Let's say I want to build a fence. Right? There's several ways I can go about building a fence. And we're going to basically say the first part of building a fence is getting your fence posts your fence posts in the ground. So how can I do that? I can dig a hole with my hands, right? Going that route, I'm probably going to stop within the first matter of moments and the fence doesn't get built. But I could do it. If I, be all end all, hands on in the dirt, you could do it. You could do it with a shovel, right? With a shovel, I can dig down, but in doing so, to get as deep, I'm in New England, it's the middle of winter, we have frost heaves, the ground freezes, things move, so to avoid that happening, you generally have to dig a certain depth. So for me, it's 36 inches to get beneath where everything freezes. So to dig down 3 feet with a shovel, our hole gets a lot wider. Right? So it's a lot more work. It's less work than my hands, but it's a lot more work. I'm moving a lot more dirt digging with a shovel than, let's say, with our next tool that I could use, which would be a post hole digger. I should have thought more about this example and had some pictures of these, just so I know what a shovel is, but maybe what a post hole digger. But a post hole digger basically digs a hole that's going to be roughly about 5 to 6 inches round, and you can go down deep. It's more efficient than a shovel. You're moving less dirt. It's a more, I should say, everyone has a shovel. Not everyone has a post hole digger. So it's one of those ones. And then the next step up from there would be like a power tool, a power auger, which has a lot more, there's a bigger investment, but it's even quicker. So my example here, using the right tool, I mean, there's different tools that will get our job done. They're going to have different expenses. They're going to have, different learning curves, right? That power auger where, it's actually, it's gas powered, and you want to probably go through some safety training on that. But if you're building lots of fences, that's going to be a lot more efficient than anything else. And that, your cost to use it over time is going to become negligible because of the speed you're able to do it, the consistency, all of those things. So in learning development, if you want to build e-learning, right? Are you looking at Articulate? Are you looking at Storyline? Are you looking at Captivate, Vyond, all those different things? Are you doing it with just straight video in maybe with Camtasia? Are you using, why am I drawing a blank? PowerPoints? Any of any and all of those are capable tools to do the job. Finding the one that helps you out, finding the one that helps you do your job in the most efficient manner is going to be great, right? Here's where I throw in a shameless plug for my company, right? We help people. We have software that helps people build instructor-led training materials, right? Facilitator guides, participant guides, things that everyone, for those who do it, you're using your PowerPoint notes, you're using a Word document, you spend a whole bunch of time doing it. Like you use our tool, LeaderGuide Pro. Our average user of that saves 57% of their time building training materials, right? So if your time to develop a instructor-led training by yourself for instructor, facilitator guide, participant guide, case studies, handouts was, let's say 30 hours, you're going to be somewhere in the, 14 to 15 hour range using LeaderGuide Pro. So having the right tool for your job is going to make it easier. So tools, they've got a weird dichotomy, right? Because I'm basically saying people lack the money to do their job, right? That's 67%, or of that 67%, money budget is one of those. And my strategies of how to or things to think about is I'm saying go and buy a tool, right? So they don't always go, hand in hand, or they seem like they're opposing ideas, but it's one of those ones where we invest into the right tool with the right strategy, right? And we've invested into ourselves to learn said tool. Your upfront cost is higher, but then as you use it and you speed up and you're able to do things quicker, you can overcome time barriers. You're gonna, that the time that you freed up allows you to do other things or get home early or whatever those are. That can help offset the money issue. And then in terms of, if you're able to be more efficient and do more, you can overcome the, not having as many people, right? So tools with the training, with strategy will help you overcome most of those items or many of those items. And the last item that I think is, finding your tribe or finding your community. So within LinkedIn, it's finding groups, Facebook groups. It could be your local ATD chapters. If you do speaking, maybe it's your local, NSA, the National Speakers Association chapters. Finding similar people doing similar things that you're doing, and then communicating with them. It's why on all of these at the end, I always give you my contact information, how to find, contact me on LinkedIn. And I always think this is funny because I'm doing this on LinkedIn and I'm saying, you're watching me on LinkedIn. But if you're not, like, let's say you go through and you see this on my YouTube channel, which is out there, but I've actually not published it in any, you could find the videos out there, but at the moment, I'm not pushing those in any way. I kind of wanted to build up a back catalog. But find people that are interested in what you do. They don't have to be like-minded people, right? If we all share the same opinion on everything, we're not challenging anything. We're not growing mentally, right? So find people who do what you do, but maybe do it differently. Look at things differently, and that way, they're going to help you look. Maybe you think about something that you didn't. You look at it in a different light that you never thought before. If there isn't a community or a group for what you like, make one, right? And this is kind of where the L&D lunch hour came from, was, and I'm trying to keep this more broad-based for learning and development currently, but for me, there's not a lot of people talking instructor-led training out there. A lot of things, you go to conferences, you go to, you see posts that people, most of it's driving towards e-learning, VR, LMSs, it's all what I would call, all the sexy things, right? And then there's like, hey, I do classroom training, I do virtual training, let's talk facilitator guides, right? Most people, it's not the sexy thing, but I love it, right? I came from a classroom environment, I came from a classroom environment to be a high school history teacher. I ended up teaching brokers and managing brokers to, work in the financial industry. And then came back to our family business that has for over 30 years been helping people build training materials. Like, I can live and talk this forever. But there wasn't enough people, I thought, talking about virtual and instructor-led training. So most of what you're going to see is we're in these learning and development lunch hours, it's always going to be a part of it, because that's where my passion is in terms of training and development. But if you can't find if people are out there for what you're doing, make your own, be loud, and people will come to you. Well, hopefully that's the idea, right? Field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. I'll let that's where I'm trying to go here. But really, that's kind of my thought process for today's lunch. I call it lunch hour. I am trying to keep it to about a half hour, so you could actually, do something other than training and development or work during this lunch hour. But, I want to thank everyone for joining me again. This is a learning experience. I am very, I look forward to it. I want to see where this ends up going. If there's ever anything you guys want to talk about, the more we can, if you put stuff in the chat, we can start talking about those as well. It's one of the things I was trying to figure out for this week, that if someone puts something into chat, that can I actually project it onto the screen? So I'm gonna just test this out myself, because no one's really thrown anything into chat at the moment. But so I'm gonna just say, like, here's a test chat, right? So if you were to type something into the chat, it comes over, and I should be able to now make that appear. Nice. Okay. So again, we're teaching and learning as we go, but we're going to, we have the ability to now show and hide your text, your chats as they come along. But with that being said, I will give you back the rest of your Friday. I hope that it's a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy your weekend. And if you need to get in touch with me, there's my email, my LinkedIn, and the website for our company. You can always get us through there. Next week, in my whole progress of doing this, one of my next steps is to actually try to put this out into podcast form. Not everyone wants to view things live. Some people like to listen. So maybe what I'm going to try to do is strip out the audio from these and start, put those out as podcasts. So next week, hopefully I'll get you some information about podcasts, if I can get that done, get you the information about some YouTubes. But other than that, we will we'll talk next week. And if you need anything, just let me know. All right. Take care, folks.